Hi, shalom, friends. You know, one of the great benefits of having children and grandchildren is you get a chance to read all kinds of wonderful children's books. Some of them are really humorous and funny, and they rhyme, and many of them have tremendously important good lessons. And I have one book, I forget the name of it, but the theme of it is, it all started with a doormat. And if I remember correctly, essentially, there was a person who made the equivalent of $1 million makeover of his home. And they asked the person, why did you change your home? How did you make it so pretty? And he says, well, it all started with a doormat. I noticed that the doormat was frayed, so I went out and I bought a beautiful doormat. And then, after a couple of days, I realized that the doormat is the nicest part of the entrance. It just somehow, the entrance didn't look as nice as the doormat. So I decided to renovate and to make a new doorway, so it should be more suitable with the doormat. And after I made this beautiful doorway, I realized that that the colors don't match. So I had to paint the outside. And then when we opened up the door, I realized that it was incongruous, the outside with the inside, so I had to change the hallway. And you get the idea. From room to room, everything was a result of something else. So here he has this beautiful mansion, and what was the impetus? And why did you do it? What inspired you to do it? It was all a doormat. I think it's a great story because it could be taken on many levels. So if we were to ask, what makes a spiritually a great person? How does one mature into spirituality or into holiness? And I think the answer would be with something simple. There have been people that have been catapulted into spiritual greatness through a great test or through a mark of heroism. So the person perhaps who risks his life to save someone, maybe someone that gives away a fortune to ransom an imprisoned person, a fellow who gives up a life of luxury in order to benefit some. Yeah, these are occasional but very rare cases that bring a person to a very high level. Very often, spiritual greatness starts from really simple and prosaic things. There was one great tzaddik who once remarked, when someone mentioned about his tremendous self-control, he said, it all started with an itch. And the way he explained it was that at a very early age, he was once experiencing an itch, and his first thought, of course, was to scratch it. And then he actually had another thought. Why should I indulge in scratching it? What will happen from that? What will happen is that my body will be a bit more comfortable. Well, now it's just an itch. What happens if what will make my body a little bit more comfortable will be another 15 minutes of sleep in the morning? And what will make my body more comfortable will be a second helping of dessert? And he began to say, you know what? I'm not going to even go there. I'm going to show my body who's boss. It's not life-threatening. It's not even life-irritating. It's just a minor irritation. I will not scratch it. And he said from that day onwards, I began to pay more attention to messages. Are they coming from a need of a soul? Are they coming from a need of the body? Or is it merely an indulgence, a whim of the body? And by controlling my urges at the most elementary of levels, I did not scratch my itch that actually opened up for me a vista in which I could see myself controlling the rest of my body. It's a beautiful anecdote, and obviously we're not advocating not to scratch an itch. What we are advocating is learning from this particular story is to see that the beginning of self-mastery is not necessarily to take the most challenging of all. So every person knows where they're particularly weak and where they need most self-control. Often it's building up your muscles, your spiritual mastery of the self in easier things. So if, for example, my biggest issue is waking up in the morning, I could try to tackle that, and I perhaps should. But there is another form of getting stronger, and that is when I begin to have more control, let's say, about my eating. And I say to myself, no, this I don't want to eat because it's not good for me, or it's merely an indulgence which I do not need. As I begin to master myself, meaning I have self-discipline, my mind controls my heart, and I could look at something which perhaps last month was very desirable, and now look at it and say, it is desirable, but I don't have to have it. Then I could begin to apply that very same self-mastery and self-discipline. I'm lying in bed and I'm looking at the watch and I say, it is desirable for me to lay down or to stay in bed for another 10 minutes, but what am I going to gain from that? It's nothing. It's pure indulgence. It's not going to make me more comfortable in the long run, nor will it make me healthier. Based on the idea that I've already exercised my self-discipline in other smaller ideas where I didn't have to struggle that much, but at the same time I did struggle. Even though it wasn't as intense, perhaps that would give me the strength to force myself or to motivate myself to leave the comfortable bed. Greatness doesn't come only from great things. Greatness is accrued over many smaller things. There's a well-known statement that a journey of many miles begins just with the first step. The journey to learn how to talk to yourself, to be in control of yourself, is by starting with smaller things. So what we call irritations of life, you want to blow up, you want to make a snide remark, you want to tell a joke on someone's expense, you want to really tell a person what an idiot they are, or how foolish they are, or how they could have done it better. And taking a step back and looking at it from an objective way, you say, what would I have gained? And the answer is nothing, other than I would have felt good. I'm thinking now, as I'm talking with you, what someone once told me. I was very upset about something. And someone mentioned to me, he said, Rabbi, the best speeches you will make are the ones that you never should have said. In other words, in my mind, I was ready to tell this guy off. Thank God I didn't. I didn't tell him off. But boy, it would have been a heck of a speech. I would have really humiliated him. Whether I was right or wrong is irrelevant. I'm sure I would have had the language to really make him feel terrible. And the result would have been disastrous. I would have felt good, he would have felt bad, and nothing positive would have come from this at all. Thank God I had the self-control or the common sense or both to not to say anything. Ask yourself, do I want it? Why do I want it? Do I need it? Why do I need it? Of course, this can make you crazy if you're going to do it on every detail. But if you stick with some basic ideas, which is, I am to be a productive human being, I am to be a productive Jew, it will take you far. Because the great journey begins with that initial self-control. I'll end off with a very famous Hasidic story that's well known in the Chabad circles, but leaving out some details. The first Rabbi of Chabad, his name was Rabbi Shneur Zalman. He's the one that wrote the Holy Tanya. He's the one that founded the Chabad Lubavitch movement, the philosophy of it. And amongst his many great students, there was one in particular whose name was Reb Shmuel Munkus. And I focus on him because though he was a profound thinker, he was known for his sense of humor. He had an ironic way of doing things which brought people to laugh. And he was a very, very serious thinker himself. But somehow he was also able to interject humor and occasionally levity to his lessons and through his lessons. The story goes that one time Hasidim were at a Farbrengen amongst themselves. Farbrengen is a Yiddish word for spending time. But in this gathering, after spending a full day of Torah and mitzvahs, some of the venerable elders were sharing their experiences growing up. They were all talking about the Rabbi. They were talking about sincerity. And the best way for me to describe it to you would be what a vigorous aerobic workout would do for your body. That's what this Farbrengen did for their soul. And it was interspersed with much singing, much introspection, more storytelling, more demands, more Torah teaching, more singing, alachayim. And this went on for a long time, and they were physically famished, physically hungry, and physically tired. And it's pretty late at night, perhaps it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and someone says, does anyone know where we could get some refreshments? And they look at Reb Shmuel. Reb Shmuel was known to be this fellow who was had a great sense of humor, and he was a friendly guy, you know. And they said, you know, you're one of the youngest. Why don't you're in charge. Bring us some refreshments. Now you have to remember, there's no Safeway that's open for 24 hours. Where are you going to get refreshments 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for a group of Hasidim? So Reb Shmuel thought for a moment and realized that there was one Chassid who was a shochet, who was a ritual slaughterer. So clearly, many times he had fresh meat in his home. And he figured this Chassid would find it in his heart happily to donate and give some refreshments. So he went to his house. Perhaps he was still up. Anyway, he knocks on the door, and the chassid says, go into the kitchen, where we do the cooking. On the right side of the counter, there's a platter of some meat, and take it. Well, Reb Shmuel went and took the platter, and was thinking about, this is fantastic, he'll come back. And, it's nourishing, it's tasty, and the people will really appreciate it. So he comes in holding this platter of, I guess today you would call it cold cuts, but it wasn't cold cuts, it was the equivalent of that. And the people are looking, and they say, Shmuel's here, Baruch Hashem, this will give us the nourishment necessary to continue this beautiful gathering for the next couple of hours. And Shmuel put it on the table. And suddenly, Shmuel begins to play with it. Puts it on his shoulder, something like this, and he starts twirling it. And for a moment, they figured that he's in a playful mood. So they played along, they clapped, very cute. Shmuel, you're wasting time. Put it down so we can eat something, so we can continue. So-and-so has to speak, so-and-so wants to share, but then we need some refreshments. And Shmuel's still playing with it. He's dancing in and out, getting closer to the table, and so on. And some of them get a little bit upset with that. Shmuel, stop playing. It's not funny anymore. We're hungry. And when one younger chassid got up to physically take it from Reb Shmuel, seeing that, took the whole platter, ran to the corner where there was like the equivalent of a garbage can, and he threw the whole thing in the garbage. Threw the whole thing in the garbage. They were shocked. This is not funny. Number one, he just wasted valuable food. No one wastes food. Number two, you want to play a game, it's a silly game, and you could do it on your time. But what about all of these people that are hungry? And they began to think about what suitable punishment they should give Reb Shmuel when, as they're debating, in comes the shochet who says, please, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. And they look at him, what are you talking about? He said, I made a terrible mistake. I slaughtered an animal today, and there was one animal that was kosher, and one animal that something went wrong, so I set it aside to sell it or to give it to the non-Jew. By mistake, when Reb Shmuel asked for me to bring for refreshments, I told him to take the wrong platter. I don't know how I could atone for this, I'm so sorry. Of course, they look at the show and said, you don't have to worry, no one touched it. But then they looked at Reb Shmuel. How did you know? I mean, you're not a Rebbe, you're just a chassid. And Reb Shmuel said, hold it, I'm not a holy man, this is not clairvoyance, it's not like I felt something. but I could tell you why I didn't give it. He said, when I met the Rebbe for the first time in a private audience, I realized that the way to absorb sacred teaching of this man is if I'm worthy of it. And as long as I cater to my body at the expense of my soul, I will never really be worthy of absorbing his teachings. So I made a very strong resolution. Anything that I have a strong desire for, even if it's permissible, but if I have a strong desire for it, and it's not connected to a commandment, then it's only connected to my desire, I will not do it. He said, when I was holding the meat, I suddenly was thinking how delicious it looks, how delectable it is. And I was thinking, I can't wait to eat it. And then I was chiding myself. Shmuel, what kind of a chassid are you? Here you are, you spend the night telling stories of great chassidim and talking about self-improvement, and here you are, you're an animal, all you want to do is eat. So I figured, you know what, I'll serve it, but I won't eat it. But then, to my surprise, I looked at all of you. Every one of you is a true spiritual giant. And now you all want to eat this meat? You weren't laughing that I was cute. You were angry. We want to eat. We want to eat now. I realized if all of you want to eat this meat, there's something not kosher about this whole thing. And without knowing, I just wanted to get rid of it. And that's what I did. This is a story which is considered a classic because though it can be read on many, many levels, the most obvious is what it says. When a chassid realizes that he wants to eat, but there's no compelling reason for him to eat, and there's no compelling reason to eat this and not something else, probably it's not coming from the right place. Now, clearly, for people like us, including the one is telling the story, I don't know if we could necessarily incorporate all of that in our life. I mean, if you eat breakfast and you'll have a dessert by the meal, I'm not going to tell you you're doing anything wrong. As long as it's kosher, it's kosher. But the concept is crucial. The concept is crucial. You want to study the Torah and you want to fulfill the commandments, ask yourself, these messages that I'm trying to absorb, am I giving it its fullest opportunity to be absorbed? In other words, do I have a suitable vessel to bring in these lights? And the way to make the vessel even more suitable is to start with small things, but learn how to master yourself. And that, my friend, is the message I want to share with you. We can become giants, we can become great, we can become at least good. And all of them, greatness and good, both begin with self-mastery, self-discipline. And that begins with something small. May God grant us the opportunity to do a lot of great small things, and then we will find ourselves metamorphosizing into becoming truly great. Shalom.